In today's video, we're going to take a look at how we can take the text that we get back from Azure OpenAI, which is in Markdown format, and actually format that into something that looks like a proper response with the little supertext and with clickable citations that we can show our users what the reference documentation is as they click on the reference. So let's get cracking. Okay, so the three packages we're going to need for this particular piece of the project is React Markdown, which gives you a React component that you will pass plugins into to format the Markdown response. The two plugins that we're going to be using are Remark GFM and Remark Supersub. Now, these all have their own functions, but in the sort of work that we've done in the past, those are the two that we'll need. We're going to install those into Visual Studio Code quickly into our project, and then we'll start cracking. Right, so I'm in VS Code now, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy the install commands from the various sites just to make it a little bit simpler. So the first one we want to install is React Markdown, so I'm just going to install that for us. Well, and once that's done, we can install Remark GFM and Remark Supersub. Now, it doesn't really matter in which order you install them. It's just we just need both references. Okay, and lastly, Supersub, we're going to install that, and then we can get cracking. Alright, so with our two plugins installed, what we want to do is change the area where we reference text into a Markdown. Now, one of the things that you'll notice when using the Markdown control is you won't have the ability to style it. So if we go style, it's not there. So what we need to do to just format some of the text, otherwise we're going to get whatever text comes back. I'm going to wrap this in a div and just give it some white text just so we can see what's going on. Okay, and then I'm going to drop the Markdown control into this guy and like that. So what we're expecting to see on the sort of app side now is that the response is actually formatted. Now, and we can see immediately we've got our bolding, we've got our spacing and those kind of things. Now, one of the things we would want to change is this area over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly write a little bit of a loop to go and find all of these references for docx or doc, whatever the case might be, and we are going to change those into supertext. Alrighty, welcome back. I wrote up a little quick method for us just to take the raw text, the body from Azure OpenAI, got a bit of a regular expression just to go and find all the references to doc with whatever number, and I put a message placeholder in there. Then we basically just loop through each one of the links and say take the doc expression and add a citation number, right? And in our sort of JSX, I added the convert document reference to supertext. Now, what that looks like is that, which is not ideal. That's not exactly what we want. We want that to be the little one or the little reference on top of the document. Now, how we do this is if we go to our Markdown control, and in our Markdown control, we want to add a property for Remark plugins, and we want to add Supersub. Now, over here, you can add Remark GFM as well. That is going to help with bolding and strike throughs and all those kind of things. It's worth reading on what each of these plugins do, just so you can not overload your content. Alright, so if I just go and fetch data again, then we will see our references are nice and small. So that's exactly right. So if we had to think about where we started with having just that blob of text, we can see here that this is starting to look much better, right, from a response perspective. Now the question that we have is, alright, well, we've got all of these references over here. What do we do with all this massive amount of text? That's not digestible. What we want to do is have a list of all the available citations, ideally referencing up with these little numbers over here, and basically having a clickable button or something along the line that the user can select to open up the citation. I prefer in sort of a drawer or something along those lines. So yeah, let's get cracking on that one. So Based on our previous videos, we'll see here that we've got a.content as part of the sort of big citation response, and our sort of objects that we're mapping there are citation message. Now, I've added two new fields called chunk ID and title. Right now, the title you would get from Azure OpenAI, and that's based on the field that you would use in Azure Cognitive Search. I'll show you guys how to find that and where to update our API to go and find that to leverage that content. But we've already got chunk ID, right? So if I go back and just quickly change our a.content to a.chunk ID, then all of a sudden we will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So that gives us something useful to look at. Now, realistically, you would want to build this into some form of little bullets or pull or something along those lines. For now, what we're going to use is just a normal button. Okay, and we're going to just put that in there. So we've got a button, just some vanilla margin just to space them out a bit, and I've added chunk ID as the text of the button, and there we go. All right, so this is starting to look like something we can do. What we want to do is add some sort of div or something. When you're using something like material, this becomes particularly easy, but what we want to do is have some sort of way for the user to interact with the actual content in its detail. So what we're going to do that is I'm going to just add a very simple div for us, just to make it pop up when we click on one of the citations. It's not going to be particularly pretty, but it is going to do the job. Obviously, as I said, when you use something like Material UI or Fluent, then those components exist for us. Okay, so I've implemented the div. It's nothing fancy, but it basically is going to open if the state property drawer open, right? Then it's going to be display block or display none with some just basic CSS so we can see it. The important thing to note here is that we would once again want to use the remark plugin inside the content of the div. Now, whether you're using Material, whether you're using Fluent, this will always be the same, right? You will always need to use that Markdown plugin. What we've done with those little buttons that represent our citations, I've just added a on-click event to set the citation message. So set the current citation that is represented by the button in the state, and then set drawer to open to whatever it is, right? And you'll notice here in my remark plugin, I'm actually not referencing the initial text that we referenced, but rather the individual citation and its content. So what that looks like, if we were to look at our citation messages over here, if I click on one, it'll open up there a scrollable div, right? As I said, this isn't pretty. And if I then go and click away and click on 5, and then it'll open up the next citation over there. So that gives the user this experience of, I've got a text, if I click on it, it sort of flows out, so I can reference whatever official material my company has given me to make sure that I am referencing the right documentation. Now, you can go a little bit further with this, especially if you're using Azure AI Search to its full extent, where you can add URLs to the document, and that's quite useful. So in the scenario that we've built internally, that actually links directly to SharePoint. So not only do I have the citation for quick reference, but I also have the link to the document in SharePoint. So the final thing that we want to look at today, this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is all good and well, but ideally what we'd want to see is the actual title of the document. Now, what we want to do in this particular regard is go and extend our citation message, right? So we've got that already in our client-side code, but we need to do a little something on our API as well. So if I go to my API, we will see here that I have my chat stream and I've got my Azure OpenAI configuration here as well. Now, what we'd want to do over here is have a new field mapping property as well. So I'll instantiate a new field mapping options, and I'm not going to trust Copilot on this one. And then we'll just see. It would look for a content field, a title field, a URL field, and an ID field. Now, the one we're going to worry about today is a title field, and we'll see that that is a string, and I'm just going to say title for now. Now, how we get this actual value depends on our configuration in Azure Cognitive Search. So if I just quickly pull that up for us, I'm in Cognitive Search now, or AI Search as it's been rebranded. Now I need to go to the index that I'm using for my documents. Now remember, in our API we're saying we're using NC policies as our data source. I'm going to hop into NC policies and I'm going to go to fields. Now this is going to be different depending on your data source. It's very much specific to the indexer. So we're just using the SharePoint indexer provided by Microsoft. But the one we want over here is metadata SPO item name. Now, if we want to see what this looks like, if I just go back to my index and I go to Search Explorer and I just go search for star, then it'll come back with some information for us. Now we can see here that we've got a metadata SPO item name is itpolicy.pdf, and that's exactly what we want. So I'm going to quickly bounce back to my API. I'm going to update that. And then what's going to happen in my response, it should bring back the title field like we've got now. So I'm going to go back to my app. I'm just going to save this and .NET should kick in. I'm going to go to my app.tsx and I'm going to change this to content. That's going to stay as content. And what we want to do is we want to make this title. So I'm just going to let that run through and be right back. Okay, it took a little while for the API to reset, but just to carry on where we were, we are going to look at our response, and now we can see over here that our buttons now have the actual names. Now, you'll notice that there are several leave policies. Now, what happens is if it actually gets the same document, but different chunks of the same document, you are going to get the same name. So that's why we include the chunk ID as well. Now, a very basic idea or a basic practice to do, what we can do in our sort of button text, instead of just saying a.title, we can say a.title dash part, and then have another space and a.chunk ID. Now, if we go back, then that's going to give you leave policy part 4, leave policy part 5, those kind of things, which gives just a bit of a rounded experience for your user. And obviously, you can go and include that in your citation response. So, if we were to take a look at where we are, we have now gone through a whole process of connecting to Azure OpenAI, pushing the stuff into React, streaming the responses, and we're now at a point where, you know, with some lipstick, this could actually be a functional app. So I really hope you've enjoyed this. If this has been helpful, please remember to hit the like and subscribe button so we can help share the channel with more people that are interested in the React and .NET API combination when working with Azure OpenAI. Until next time, God bless and stay safe.